I don't want to like gabble and talk really quickly. So I'm going to say some stuff.
I'm going to say some stuff, yeah.
Julie's going to say some stuff.
And then Doug's going to say more other
I'm
stuff.
going to say some more stuff. But if you want all the slides, and we'll put this on the screen at the end, it's bit.ly/epic new Americans. Okay, so you're very welcome to take a picture of that, have a look at the slides, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to speak quickly because I know some people in the room don't have English as their first language.
And you have a nice translator that's going to do their best. So.
Exactly. So here we go. I'm from a cooperative called We Are Open. We do lots of stuff. So the way that we describe ourselves is that we'll untangle your organizational spaghetti. And Julie's from Participate.
And yeah, I'm from Participate. And we basically support learning communities and communities of practice. And we've been working with We Are Open for many years. We've been in the badging community of practice for also many years. A lot of the work that we do with recognition technologies is just to bring recognition into learning communities. So we're not just a badging platform, we sort of integrate it for small organizations, higher ed, stuff like that. All right, I'm gonna keep going. All right, so, I went the wrong way. So here's some context for this project. So the International Rescue Committee brings in refugees into different cities across the United States, and then support them with housing, with workplace supports. They work with local place-based employers where they bring these folks in, and then sort of try to settle them into their new communities and support that settlement process. So this project was really Jobs for the Future. Here, I'll go one more slide. So Jobs for the Future collaborated with the International Rescue Committee for one reason, was to test new technologies, LERs in the shape of verifiable credentials and wallets, to see if their workplace training that was supporting these folks, so there was a work readiness course, if they had that credential, they put it in a wallet, what was the affordance of the technology? So the project was not necessarily to test the program, the learning. It was really isolated to what is the affordance of this verifiable credential? Does it help ease the relationship or facilitate the relationship between this new American and their future employer? Is there some sort of trust enabled in that LER? And essentially, does it build in some efficiencies? So Paige, who works at JFF, they came to Participate because we were able to sort of spin this up very quickly. Because what happens a lot in these projects is that A, there's not enough time, there's not enough funding, it's very restrictive, and so a lot of time is sort of chewed up in the beginning of the project trying to figure out, wait, I thought these technologies were just available, where can we find them, does it work, da-da-da. We were able to sort of rapidly kind of just try stuff. So I just want to echo what you were saying, like we're overthinking some of this stuff, find partners that are just ready to experiment. And so we were one of those partners. So we spun up a credential and then we called We Are Open because we had the project had a little bit of research money because we needed to see what did this credential mean to these folks. It was based on a work readiness program, again, how to work in the United States. So right off the bat, and then I'm gonna pass it to Doug, we know the main problem was that the new Americans are coming from over 100 countries with credentials that range from being a physicist to having non-formal training. So developing the right sort of one-size-fits-all credential was already gonna be some difficulty there. All right, Doug. And then this is just logistics. This is sort of telling you where the implementation happened. All right, Doug, take it away.
So this is a bit of a summary. So we've got the people involved in this are New Americans, which is a lovely name, I think, much better name than just talking about immigrants and refugees, people welcoming to the country. So we've got New Americans, we've got employers, we've got Participate as the technology platform. Really important that earlier this year, one of the only platforms able to issue Open Badges version 3, which are wallet-based, as some people will know. Kerry from MIT's Digital Credentials Consortium, another one of our clients, kind of helped with that. And then I'm from We Are Open Co-op. The report from this is not going to be publicly released. It's going to just inform JFF's submission to their funder. So this is the only bit you'll see of the entire project. Now, the images that I'm sharing today are by my wonderfully talented comrade, Brian Mathers. Some of you may have seen these kinds of things before. But I love this because it really encapsulates the fact that the way that we evaluate skills, especially when it comes to trying to understand how people might be able to contribute either to a company or a country is a bit ridiculous. Like, we don't really evaluate those skills very well. And often when we have employers looking at somebody, it's extremely flat. It's a LinkedIn profile, it's a CV, it's a resume, and there's a lot of hidden talent there. And on this image, that's indicated by those kind of badges around the side, which the employer can't see. So what we did here, very small project really, we did some surveys with different stakeholder groups, but we also did some really interesting user research interviews to try and get both the quantitative data and the qualitative data. And we'll share some of that now, but we can't go into as much depth as we want in the time that we've got available.
So I would say the first thing off the bat was definitely the technical piece. There was a lot of assumptions when JFF even started this project that IRC would actually start issuing credentials based on open source technologies that the DCC provides. So this comes into now privacy issues, which I know are difficult, but the IRC holds some very sensitive data on new Americans. So they actually did not want their data systems linked at all. So even though they wanted to experiment with issuing verifiable credentials, they didn't necessarily want that data linked with the data they are holding for political reasons. Some of these folks are really in danger, and they're vulnerable populations. So that was something that was, at least initially, what they had to evolve very quickly, and to use kind of a standalone solution that would just hold maybe an email, right? And then all of the data of the credential, and then the earner had it and essentially pushed into the learner credential wallet, and then they were free to use it and share it as they would. But none of that data was captured in Participate.
So these numbers are really small in terms of the number of survey responses we got, in terms of the number of interviews we got. But the data was actually really rich. And what's interesting to me is that when you're actually doing usability testing, when you're trying to think about, is this useful to the target group that you're looking at, you actually only need kind of 5 users to get 80% of the issues which are coming up with the platform or the credential that you're looking at. So we found out some issues with the credential, and this is the credential.
So this is another thing that I would also say to do right off the bat is get your designers, get your users in the room with your technology providers. So with having Doug and We Are Open in the room, we were able to rapidly get feedback from users about what this new credential looked like. Remember, we were deploying this for the first time literally a month before these folks were using it. So how did it look in the wallet? How did it look in the platform? How did they use their mobile device to push it? So we were able to rapidly make changes, which we're now implementing. So having those sort of like interdisciplinary design teams when you're doing these projects has been really very helpful for us, especially as a small organization.
And just to say quickly that this has a lot of text
in it.
Yeah, as we'll come on to in a moment. Julie, do you want to talk about this?
I mean, again, with the rapid deployment to support this project, this is how this credential looked, right? So a lot of the sort of criteria and the skills were not yet sort of disaggregated and looking in a good visual way. So this was just, again, feedback that we needed from diverse learners and diverse earners. And then this, again, the IRC, when you're sort of handing this to an employer, and I think this is an issue for all conversations around consumption of credentials, is especially employers or anyone really is not going to do portfolio assessment. We know portfolio assessment is great, but it's too time consuming. So how are you going to visualize the data that's baked into this badge in a very quick way so that employers can say, yep, we're going to, this credential is actually going to facilitate the pipeline. That is the sort of the critical question, is that if we have 1,000 people applying for this job, we know that IRC issued this credential, we then trust that, and then there it goes. And then they can look at the evidence if they want.
So there were lots of things that we found in a kind of more holistic way, but about the credential itself, we made kind of 3 recommendations. First of all, and I'll come back to this in a second, we wanted to make sure that it was clear who earned the credential. Secondly, we wanted to make sure, like Julie said, that it was easy to read. Like, if you're an employer who's coming across this for the first time, is it quick and easy to understand what skills people have got when they've earned this credential? And thirdly, to kind of make more broad skill recognition. What else have new Americans brought with them over and above going through a 6-week program around job readiness training? The recipient clarification's really interesting, especially when you think about the current political climate in the US, because there's benefits of putting someone's name on, as in making sure that somebody isn't trying to steal someone else's credential. But there's also drawbacks on that, because you're basically identifying through this as an immigrant or a refugee to this particular country. So we haven't got time to go through the rest of the slide deck really quickly. Sorry, in much detail, but we'll go through it quickly. I'm going to skip some slides here.
Yeah.
But we found that employers really want to be able to quickly assess a candidate's qualifications. That's true of all employers everywhere. The IRC staff really wanted to make the job readiness training better in many ways. And new Americans want to show all of their skills, but sometimes they're quite confused about the technology that's involved.
Yeah, and I do think some of what we've seen through the course of this conference are the tools that we could have handed to new Americans to almost maybe build their own first badge, like who are you, right? So that, I mean, is also good pedagogical practice. If they're such a diverse set of folks, who are you? And then maybe thinking about that work readiness, and that needed a little bit more collaboration with place-based employers. What is work readiness? I mean, for a small employer, that can look like something, or for a very big employer, that can look like something else. So again, trying to do something at scale, we understand that, but again, like really having sort of understanding the diverse working and learning context. Yeah. So that would be my other recommendation, is getting them to kind of self-issue and go through that process themselves.
Two more things then. The IRC clients themselves didn't understand or use the word credential, even when using their own language. So what we found, so Shanice in particular from IRC was fantastic at drawing out of new Americans what they were good at, and she just used the word app, you know, so because that was what they're used to on their phone. They didn't care that it was a wallet. They didn't care that it was a certificate or a verifiable credential or whatever. It was just an app to them. So we made some recommendations. Julie, I'm just going to blast through these so Calvin can get on stage.
Yeah.
The credential which recognizes the end of the journey is the job readiness training credential. But obviously, if you're coming to a new country, you're bringing skills with you, and also you're learning skills along the way, one of which is huge amounts of resilience. We recognize 3 different types of visibility that could be increased with this credential. So making it more granular, you know, increasing the granularity of different types of skills, having multiple credentials, having a diversity of different types of credentials, so self-issued, peer-issued, endorsed, etc. And then really having hyper-local partnerships and collaborations, because what IRC provides in Tucson, Arizona is different to Des Moines in Iowa or Chicago or whatever.
Yeah, and I'll do a little plug also for that locality. So just getting people to just jump in and pilot and get that ecosystem together and just find out what's meaningful for every sort of leg on that stool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the world we want, really, I think the world we're trying to build together around open recognition, open badges, verifiable credentials, is a situation where whether it's your transport tickets being on your phone, I went to a Paris Saint-Germain game last night where I used my digital wallet to get into the stadium, whether it's paying for a coffee with your phone, we have our credentials on our device and we use them in the same way that we use all the rest of the credentials that we have. I haven't got time to talk about any of the rest of them. I want to make sure that Kelvin has enough time.
Yeah.
But just to say that Betsy, who works for, is the US Director for Talent Beyond Boundaries, kind of warned against credentialism and unexpected consequences. So for example, if you give someone a punctuality badge, are we saying that everyone who hasn't got the punctuality badge isn't punctual? Well, no. So we need to make sure that we aren't living in the world of unintended consequences and that we're having a more holistic view of what's going on.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for listening. The slides are at the top, and that's our email addresses.
Do we have time for a question, or you want to do it at the end? Or
I don't think so. Kelvin needs to get on this stage.
Kelvin, you come up, and then if you want to ask a question while we're transitioning.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Or, yeah, well, I'll talk to you.
Thank you.